Community broadband, leveling the economic playing field forever. It's true. I'm a independent strategic consultant and an ICT entrepreneur. I live in Pincher Creek, Alberta, southwest Alberta. My office is right there. We're still the wind energy capital of Canada. We'll see how long that lasts. I think Ontario is pretty determined to overtake us on that, and Quebec as well. Here's why I do what I do. Big part of the reason. This is what's called an age pyramid. And this is the age pyramid for Southwest Alberta, which includes my community. What you see here is age increasing vertically, and it's what's called a histogram. You know, how many people do you have in each of these age ranges, which goes up by about 4 years per increment. We got men on this side, women on that side, and here's the distribution for all of Alberta. Okay, that's the average distribution. I'm sure you can see there's a bit of a deviation there. So we're hollowing out the middle of our communities in Southwest Alberta. We're missing about half of our wealth creators between the ages of 18 and 49, and it's in both genders. If you look up to the older ages, you see that we're actually overrepresented. So we have a general aging of the population within Southwest Alberta. I mean, that applies right across Canada, but it's particularly acute in rural communities. And this is actually putting a lot of rural communities at risk, including some of our own. It comes a point where you don't have enough enough young families with children in the community. Your schools are at risk. If you lose a school, it's practically a death sentence, because at that point, you have a very difficult time attracting new people to come into your community. So if I want my children and my grandchildren to be able to prosper in the community where they're growing up, the community that they call home, I need to be taking the initiative in creating opportunity that's going to be interesting to them when they get to their wealth creating years. And that's what I do. That's what I work on. They won't be looking for McJobs when they get to the age of 18. One of the areas that I work in is data centers and the opportunity to bring the data management industry out into rural Canada. Right now, the vast majority of data management facilities are in large urban centers, and we are shipping vast amounts of electrical power into large urban centers from rural areas where it's being generated in order to power these facilities. It's one of the fastest growing industries in the world, and it is also the fastest growing source of greenhouse gas emissions in the world because of the volume of electrical power that the industry consumes. So why aren't we shipping data instead of shipping power? Put the facilities out where the power is being generated, especially where there is an abundance of renewable power, and ship the data out to those locations. And with the emergence and the ascendance now of the cloud, that's a very real opportunity. Enterprises, government, everybody's going over to the cloud, and it's creating huge demand for these kinds of facilities. This is Apple's iCloud data center in Maiden, North Carolina. So here's my iPhone. It automatically backs up any new photos or stuff that I have on here, and it backs it up to that facility right there. You'll note that it's in rural North Carolina, okay? And this is a huge opportunity for Canada because one of the biggest costs of operating a data center is cooling costs. The equipment, the computer equipment in these facilities generates a lot of heat. If you're in a colder climate with an average, lower temperature, then that keeps the cost lower. And this is why Facebook has just built its newest data center in the north of Sweden. And it's powered by a hydro dam, by the way, so it's 100% green powered. Here, the story is about Apple making this facility 100% green powered by the end of this year, and they're going to use solar. What that basically means is that it won't be powered all the time by the sun, obviously, but the total volume of power that they'll be generating from the solar panels they'll be putting on the roof of this building and elsewhere will more than exceed the total volume of power that the facility consumes. And they're going to produce that power very close to the facility itself. We can do that. In fact, in Southwest Alberta, where we have this abundance of renewable energy, the wind energy, most sunlight hours per year, and also a fair bit of hydropower, and a great deal of biomass power, We have anywhere between 2 and 4 optical fiber trunk lines that run right through the middle of all this stuff, right in southern Alberta. We're perfectly positioned to capitalize on this opportunity. The other area that I work in is community broadband networks. This is a picture from rural North Dakota, just outside the town of Carrington, which is where Dakota Central Telecommunications is headquartered. They're a rural telecom cooperative. They've been in operation since the late 1950s. They provide service over a 4,000 square mile footprint. And this trend of community broadband networks, of which rural telecom co-ops are just one example, it is accelerating, and it's accelerating quickly. This is from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance in the United States. They're following the development of these networks across the United States. And there's a couple of Canadian networks that are also on here as well. I called them up to make sure they got some Canadian representation on there. So there's Stratford, Ontario. Coquitlam, BC is over here. Eastern Ontario Regional Network should be on here, and maybe Parkland at some point. Why is this happening? It's because affordable, secure, capable, reliable networks are now essential to productivity and to competitiveness in the global digital economy. And if you ask economic development professionals in the United States what kind of bandwidth they need just to meet basic economic development objectives, most of them will tell you 100 megabit per second. If you don't have 100 megabit per second symmetric connectivity, you're not in the game. You're not going to be able to compete with the growing number of communities that we saw on that map that can provide that and provide it very cost effectively. So this is the bar being set that we now have to meet, because if in a rural community you can't provide comparable infrastructure with comparable capability and affordability and reliability, you're not going to be in the game. And this is what is driving communities and governments around the world to drive extension and expansion of broadband networks, very often on a public utility model. And the big picture here, the economy is changing in a very dramatic way and quite quickly. We do two kinds of work. We do manual work and we do mental work. And increasingly, the economy, the wealth in the economy is being created through mental effort. So for mental or manual effort, we've developed some awesome technology to provide us with leverage and boost our productivity. We've got automobiles. They proliferated for that reason because they have huge economic and social utility, efficiency, affordability, but the cumulative external costs, or externalized costs, as you might hear, of the proliferation of this technology has kind of caught up with us. It's become problematic. There are solutions at hand, and that's the new technology. This is actually a video. I don't have time to run it, but it's Steve Jobs drawing the comparison between information and communication technology, and specifically computers, with a bicycle for the mind. Okay? It's leverage. Technology is leverage, and in this case, it's leverage for intellectual effort, and it boosts productivity. So I got my iPhone here. I've lost, I don't know what the count is anymore, but there's over 500,000 applications that have been developed just for this one device. You talk about utility, 500,000 applications. I could use it as a paperweight, so maybe 500,001. Now the rate at which this stuff is proliferating, Bernard already mentioned this stuff, it's just, you know, exploding, the penetration around the world. And it's not only transforming automotive technology, it's also replacing it. And this is telework, right? For instance, being able to work from home, being able to work from the farm that has that fiber connectivity. So here's a picture of a radiologist with his back to you, looking at multiple screens with high-resolution imagery on there. If you got sufficient bandwidth, you could be doing that job from anywhere, including a farm. Quick comparison here between the cost of producing jobs in the automotive industry and in the knowledge-based industries. This is from Georgia, initiative in Georgia. Costs here, what do we got here? Cost per job created. It took $106,000 plus on average to create a job in the automotive industry, $4,900 to create a job in the knowledge industry. Talk about leverage. So we have this digital revolution. It's accelerating and democratizing and decentralizing as well the production and leveraging of human intellectual capacity. And yes, those kids are in Africa. Those are, I forget what the computer is called, but it's a program, $100 laptop. What's happening around the world very quickly, Australia is building a nationwide optical fiber network. It's going to bring fiber to the home connectivity to over 93% of homes and businesses throughout that entire country. It's the biggest infrastructure project in that country's history. It's going to cost, estimated between $40 and $45 billion to build that. Now, not all the money will come from government. They will, of course, try and leverage the private sector wherever they can, but they're building it as a public utility. And it'll be operated on an open access basis, just like an open access road system. Anybody can get on there. Whether you're a customer or service provider, you're going to have no problem getting onto that network. All right, here's what's happening in the EU. They're spending billions to boost their broadband speeds. Chattanooga, Tennessee, one of the first communities in North America to deploy a complete fiber network over its entire footprint. It's actually the municipally owned electric utility who drove this initiative. They did it so that they can manage the electric grid far more cost effectively. And the savings that they will realize from being able to deploy smart grid technology by way of the fiber network will pay for the network within about 10 years. That does not include revenues that they're going to be generating from delivery of commercial services. That's triple play to customers throughout their entire service footprint. And you end up being able to read it there. Okay. If you live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, you can get gigabit per second connectivity across the entire service area for $350 a month. If you're in a certain community in California, you can get it for $70 a month. Gigabit per second connectivity. Okay? This is the bar that we now have to meet. Why are they doing it themselves? Why are communities building out first mile networks? And it's because the business case for industry to do it simply isn't there. Certainly not in the rural communities and smaller communities. They'll go after the metropolitan areas. They'll pump all their money into metro first because that's where they're going to get the best return on their investment. It's that simple. So what do you do as a rural community or even as a small city like Chattanooga? You have to take the initiative. Nobody else is going to do it for you. You're going to have to take the initiative. Here are some network initiatives here in Canada. Community broadband networks. You're going to hear about one of these shortly, and that's the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. That's the project that Laura's been working with for, I think, right from the get-go, right? Yeah. ONET is a fiber to the home initiative in the community of Olds, Alberta. And QNet, dark fiber network in Coquitlam, BC. Valley Community Fiber Network is in the Acadia Valley, Nova Scotia. Rhizome Networks in Stratford, and I think I covered them all there. And there's more than that. Yeah, that was just a sample. So what's the opportunity? Affordable, capable broadband connectivity literally opens new frontiers, huge new frontiers of opportunity for rural and remote communities. And for many communities, it will mean the difference between revitalization, economically and socially, demographically, or sustained economic and social decline. Is your community going to be a land of opportunity or something else? So what does the future hold for these young rural Canadians? It depends what opportunities we create for them. This will only happen if you have the leadership, and it's committed leadership. Okay? It's not leadership that's vulnerable to 3 or 4 year election cycles. That's really important because these initiatives take longer than that. They can take a decade to unfold. Very important to keep that in mind. Collaboration is essential. If you can collaborate with adjacent municipalities, realize economies of scale, that's very, very helpful. But first and foremost, you're going to have a vision that's going to drive this whole thing, followed by a strategy. You take the initiative, and you have to get invested. The community has to be invested. Leverage money where you can find it, but you're going to be able to leverage a lot more money if you actually put money in the first place. Empty pockets never held anyone back. Only empty heads and empty hearts can do that. Thanks very much.